Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily, and today I am extremely fortunate to be joined by none other than William Katt, who is someone you've probably seen either through his film or television work from movies like Carrie,
Right.
House, my personal favorite, The Greatest American Hero, and of course, he's going to be narrating the upcoming re-release of Jeff Rice's Kolchak, The Night Stalker. So, William, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Thank you. And by the way, just a side note, today is February 5th. It's the late, great Stephen Cannell's birthday. So,
Excellent.
yeah,
What an
so
interesting
this is
coincidence.
fortunate that we
Yes.
are talking.
It is, it is, and I'm really excited about your involvement with this Kolchak book. And I got a few questions for you about how you got involved. The first is just, what is your personal history with Kolchak?
Well, I was aware of it, when the first movie came out in 1972, and I did not see the second one in 73 that they did,
Night
but
Strangler, I think it was, right?
Strangler, yes, the Night
Yeah.
Strangler, yeah, And then I saw a couple episodes of the show when it they had a short-lived series in I think 1974.
Yep.
Um, but I was very familiar with Darren McGavin. He had been famously done a lot of work prior to appearing on that and taking over the lead in that show. I was familiar with his work, and subsequent to that, probably he's most famous for, audience would remember him from The Christmas Story, and then
Right.
again, more recently, the Adam Sandler film Billy Madison.
Yeah, it's true. He played his father.
Right, right. He was great in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly a legendary actor that I think, there's a handful of generations that still remember him, which is serendipitously you brought him up because my next question has to do with, are we going to be getting your best Darren McGavin impression on the audiobook? Or are
I
you bringing something totally different?
No, I definitely tried to channel him when I was reading his character in the story. He reminded me a lot of my late great friend Bob Culp.
Mhm.
Robert Culp. I mean, he had a kind of unique delivery. He was really full of himself, really full of himself, and he got himself into a lot of trouble. And he's a fun character to do. By the way, I read recently that Edgar Wright, who did Shaun of the Dead and some other great work, the director is working with Johnny Depp, and it is in the works. They're writing a
Oh,
script to bring this back. I didn't know if you,
wow.
yeah,
I didn't, but you know what? That excites me because if anyone's going to do it service, I feel like Edgar Wright has the right mixture of nostalgia and modernity to update the character for the modern age.
yeah, I think so too, and I think Johnny Depp. I would love to see him in that character.
Yeah, I think he's got that personality, a little bit quirky, a little bit interesting.
Yeah,
I think that's what made Darren McGavin so good in the roles. He's just this average guy, but then again, he's just got this cadence and delivery, almost curmudgeon like.
yeah,
Um,
he's very curmudgeonly like. It's interesting to read about and see where the genesis of all this kind of came from in the sci-fi world and dealing with the supernatural elements. I mean, I think Greatest American Hero borrowed and paid homage to that type of filmmaking many years later, and of course, it's well known Chris Carter did X Files, and he pays homage to that show famously.
oh yeah, I mean X-Files is pretty much just Kolchak without some of the humor, right?
Right, I think so too. Yeah,
When it's interesting we're talking about kind of this resurgence of Kolchak because alongside the book that you're narrating, there's also a comic series that Steve Niles, David Desmalchian, and Rodney Barnes are putting together, and now we hear sharing the news of this potential movie happening. Why do you think right now is the right time for Kolchak to make this comeback?
well, I think people are interested in an average guy. I mean, McGavin was an average Joe, a reporter, and a skeptic to begin
Yeah.
with about all these things. These supernatural. He didn't believe in the first show in the Night Stalker. He didn't believe in werewolves or vampires. But he slowly came about to believe that these things are actually out there.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they bring up, the updated to his role because they don't really have too many beat reporters anymore. I mean, journalism's kind of changed a little bit. It's in the internet age.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll be a blogger or something like that. I'm not sure, but maybe they keep him on the old beat street just for memory's sake.
I'm curious how they do it because, he famously, he does in the opening of the shows, he's talking into a little old fashioned recording device, right?
Yep.
And I have to see how they're going to update that.
Yeah, I imagine him maybe bringing the same costume, right? That same hat and kind of
Pork pie hat. Yeah,
the checkered jacket, so he'll
yeah.
still has that look. Maybe he stands out in the crowd kind of thing.
I think so.
Um,
I think so.
but it is a right time for it. And as far as the moving away a little bit from the Kolchak side of things, you've had a really long and very successful career in the entertainment industry. And I'm curious to know, when you reflect back on all the work you've done across so many different roles and working with different filmmakers, what are the things you've been most proud of?
Oh, well, my work on stage has probably been the biggest feather in my cap for me. I worked with South Coast Repertory, David Ems, Martin Benson early on in my career. That really, I really fell in love with the theater and the community in the theater. I love the puzzle solving component of that. In the first 4 or 5 weeks, you're solving a puzzle, trying to bring some reflect what the author's intentions were. I love that. Some of the work I did there was fabulous, and then of course doing Pippin, and I got to work with Bob Fosse. You can't do better than
Right?
that. You know,
How
that
many
was
people get to say that?
yeah, that was just right up there. And a couple of times I got to work with Jack Hofstas, who did famously won a Tony for directing Elephant Man on Broadway originally. And I got
Oh,
to do
wow.
2 plays with him, and oh my God, both of those times was just really wonderful for me. And they stand at the zenith of my career. I love doing Hero. That was a lot of fun. It's great to go to work and laugh all day, and work with Connie Selica, who's just a doll. We're still very good friends. And Bob Culp, of course, he was just wonderful. And he taught me a lot about writing. I
Mm.
really learned how to be a writer on that show working with Bob Culp, because a lot of people don't know he thought of himself first as a writer, then a director, and then an actor.
Huh.
And so it was great. I don't think there was many scenes that he and I did in The Greatest American Hero that we didn't put our hands on the dialogue, not changing the plot points, but changing the dialogue so that it felt more natural coming out of our mouths.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know.
it makes sense, especially given your work early on in the stage, that you have this kind of not so much improvisation, but bringing your own flavor to it, and then working within the moment with your colleagues to really create the scene. Do you still do any stage acting?
I haven't in quite a while. My 32-year marriage, years ago in the early 2000s, I had been away so much during the year. I'd be away for 5 and 6 months at a time. And it was very, very hard on my wife, who was a full-time designer and working and raising 4 kids. I mean, it was very difficult. So I promised her I would stop doing that. I occasionally would go and direct something, but that's like being away for 4 or 5 weeks. After opening night, you get to come home. So it wasn't this long, long period of time away. So I don't do that any longer. I do periodically. I do some film work. I just did a film with Alfred Molina and Mindy Sterling, who's famously with the Groundlings. She worked a lot with Mike Myers, and
Yeah.
he knows who Alfred Molina is. Wonderful stage actor, wonderful, just a wonderful, bare, lovely human being. I loved working with him. He was terrific.
He does seem so affable when you see him on screen. Just seems welcoming. There's something about him, even when he's playing his worst roles. He seems like someone who would just walk up and give you a big hug.
Oh yeah, 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 absolutely. Did you ever see
Cool.
him in Frida, the
I
film?
did.
Oh
I
God,
did.
he's so wonderful in that.
I mean, Frida's an outstanding film for on the performance angle, but also just the writing and direction and bringing her story to life in that way. And as someone who's Mexican in origin, it's obviously very close to me to see folks from my raza up there on screen. So,
Freddie Rassa. That's great.
well, William, I know you're taking on the role of narrating this book and obviously bringing your own Kolchak to the fray, but Would you ever consider, reprise, coming back to the role either for another book or if you ever asked to do any other work with the character?
Well, we'll see. I mean, they know it was my first time out. I was a newbie. I had never done an audiobook before. And I'll tell you something, it's not the same.
Really?
It is not the same as acting. It's very different. You have to be a very, very good cold reader, sight
Mhm.
reader. It's like when a musician reads music and it plays it sight reading. Well, that's the same thing with the book. You're reading it and you're sight reading, even though you're familiar with it. You have to get every syllable, every vowel, and all the author's intention and nuances and character. I found it to be very challenging, and hopefully, hopefully people will go, "Oh, he did a pretty good job," and they'll ask me back. I don't know. Who knows? I just
Oh,
did my.
that's fascinating to hear. This is your first time in the audiobook realm. Have you done any other voiceover work or anything like that before?
Oh, I had done. I had did some TV commercials for Toyota. I had done some work years ago in the Animaniacs and worked with Warner
That's
Brothers. I
right.
played Hawkman in a couple things and a couple games and whatnot. But that's different because you get a chance to act, you know, and uh, and you're familiar with the material before going into.
All
And
right. Wow.
the director is always there yelling commands. Oh, say it this way, say it that way.
Yeah, I
But then
imagine with the book it's a little longer, right? You have kind of a bit more of a script to get through, or not so much a script, but the actual pages themselves. Um,
Right. Well, you're working. You're in a small booth with a microphone, and everybody else is remote, and they're looking at you, of course, and it's all in real time. And you're reading for 6 hours a day. It took me
wow.
7 days to do this.
Wow. How do you keep your voice and everything kind of because obviously talking for an extended period of time, no matter who you are, is going to bring some tension to your vocal cords.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we would take breaks every half hour or so, and I'll tell you something. Halfway through the book reading, I got sick as a dog.
Oh
Just
no.
freaking sick as a dog. So I went to urgent care and they put me on steroids and I had all this stuff. And I'm hoping that it's not too obvious in the reading of the book.
Well, hopefully you're on the mend as well.
Oh
It's
God,
awful to be sick.
we finished the book over a month ago. And it comes out, by the way, February 11th. So I think
Correct.
it's this
Next
next
Tuesday, right?
next Tuesday. Yes,
Excellent. I mean, and are you still in Los Angeles as well?
I am in Los Angeles.
Are
I
you
am.
are you doing okay now with the fires and everything? Now that that's hopefully subsided for some time.
Yeah, yeah, we dodged a bullet there. We were set to evacuate, and we did not have to at last minute. I'm so thankful to the firefighters, and but gosh, so many people lost their homes in Altadena and in the Palisades. It's just I don't know where you are, but I hadn't seen it directly. I flew out to Albuquerque a week or so ago, and I saw it firsthand as we were flying over it, leaving LAX, and it's just it's devastating to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Cleveland, Ohio now, but I used to live in Los Angeles for 8 years. And my old neighborhood was right there on 4th Street and Ocean Avenue in Santa Monica. So, that was obviously quite close to a lot of the Palisades fires and things. So I'm glad to hear that you weren't affected. Hopefully close to you are okay as well, because was a pretty tragic situation for sure.
Yep, yep, yep. You're in Cleveland, all right. Well, I did
Yes.
the director I was talking about, Jack Hofstas. We did the world premiere of The Days of Wine and Roses there with Maya Dillon. I was there at the Cleveland Playhouse in the
Oh,
early
yeah.
2000s. Yeah, yeah.
Down there in Gordon Square, I think it's called.
Correct, correct. I
Oh,
love.
wow.
Oh,
It,
fabulous, fabulous city.
it is. I did not think I was going to love it as much as I do, but I think the fact that it has that big city feel, but it is not a big city, helps me feel like there's a lot of stuff to do, but I never get overwhelmed by it like you do in an LA or a New York.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Well,
well, thanks, man. I've really
yeah,
enjoyed.
William, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time. And just to remind everyone, they can pick up a copy of the audiobook coming out on February 11th from Monstrous Books. William Katt, you've been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what and listening to even whatever you're doing next.
Oh, great, man. Cheers.
Thank you.